الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Today inshallah we will cover this book, The Seeker's Aid in Upholding the Religious Duties by Al-Imam Shaykh Abdul Ghani Al-Ghunaymi Al-Maydani rahimahullah, who's from Syria, passed away in the year 1299, meaning Islamic date. When we say 1299, we mean the Islamic date, meaning according to the lunar calendar, the moon, as opposed to the solar calendar, which is the Gregorian calendar. And this book was published recently in Arabic, but now has also been published in Arabic with the English translation. So we will start on page 1, where the author, rahimahullah, says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the All Merciful, the Compassionate. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And may Allah bless our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family and his companions, and give them peace. أما بعد فيقول العبد الفقير الجاني عبد الغني الغنيمي الميداني وفقه مولاه لما يرضاه وتولى رشده وهداه. To proceed, the impoverished, sinful slave Abdul Ghani al-Ghunaymi al-Maydani, may his master enable him to do that which pleases him and attend to his uprightness and guidance, says. So on this point, what does he say? If we read the translation, these are a few pages that I hope will be of immense benefit. Through the benevolence of Allah Most High, I have mentioned herein the religious obligations and duties for the generality of the believers. After one of the admirers and true brothers sought such instructions from me, I have entitled it, The Seeker's Aid in Upholding the Religious Duties. Meaning some people, they would request the author to write a book on those things which are necessary for every believer to know, and then the authors would write a short text covering all those religious duties. So with this regard, the first obligation, what is the first obligation? He states, I say the first obligation on every legally responsible person is Iman, faith, and Islam. These two are almost inseparable terms. However, faith is the function of the heart, whereas Islam is the function of the limbs, as has been explained in the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, wherein he said, tell me about Islam, tell me about Iman, faith. Iman, faith, is belief in the heart of a person which is between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while Islam is the actions of the limbs. So when we profess faith with the tongue, we say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is expression of the faith with the tongue. So people are taken on face value. When someone expresses Islam, we take them on their face value that they are Muslim. But Iman is between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you may have a person who expresses Iman, but in reality from inside he does not believe. But we are not told to judge that in this world. That is left between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Iman is what is in the heart, and Islam is the action of the limbs. Whatever we do with the limbs. Jawarih is limbs in Arabic. Faith, Iman first. He states, فأما الإيمان فالتصديق بالقلب بما جاء به النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الله تعالى وهو الإيمان بالله تعالى وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقدر كله خيره وشره من الله تعالى. Which means, as for faith, it is the heart's conviction in all that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam conveyed from Allah Most High, which is to have faith in Allah Most High, His angels, His revealed scriptures, His messengers, the last day, and the preordination in its entirety, the good of it and its bad as coming from Allah Most High. Most of you must have memorized Amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi. So this is known as what? Iman Mufassal. So the summary of faith and the detail of faith. This is all that a Muslim needs to know in order to protect his Iman, to protect his faith. But of course, each one of these points, which is Iman in Allah, Iman in the angels, belief in the angels, belief in the messengers, belief in the divine decree, the good and the bad, each one of these has details which the mutakallimun, meaning the theologians, discuss and debate. So if an atheist approaches a Muslim regarding belief in Allah, the Muslim would know, the theologian would know how to respond to the objections to the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what the author does is he goes into the detail of each aspect of Iman. So he states, this is a heading with the subheading of Allah Most High and His attributes. ثم الإيمان بالله تعالى هو التصديق بأنه موجود واجب الوجود متصف بالقدم والبقاء والوحدانية والقيام بنفسه والمخالفة للحوادث, which states, faith in Allah Most High is to be convinced that He exists, meaning you know He exists and is necessarily existent, which would be the translation of muttasifun bil qidam, whilst being characterized by pre-eternality, everlastingness, oneness, self-subsistence, and is dissimilar to that which is originated. Each one of these is the divine attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Firstly, mawjood, that Allah exists. Of course, there are people who object to the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we summarize those objections? Those objections to the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be summarized in three ways. Number one, and in school you may come across this, people, teachers in RS, religious studies, is that what they call it now? RE, they still call it RE in Banbury, religious education. It was known as that in the 90s, and some of the children in Birmingham told me that now they've changed it to RS, religious studies. This changing of the name occurs every decade or two. In RE, some of the teachers may sometimes bring up objections against Islam. So as Muslim students, you need to equip yourself with knowing how to answer those objections. So if you come across groups like Britain First, EDL, English Defence League, all these other racist groups, they tend to object to Islam. So as Muslims, you are obligated to know your obligation of Islam. And this goes for the adults as well. Because what happens is the adults, all their lives, they ignore the teachings of Islam. And then when they confront groups like EDL or groups like Britain First or any of these other far-right groups, they are unable to answer their objections and they fall in doubt regarding Islam. But the weakness was the part of the Muslim who did not learn regarding his faith. So these objections to Islam or to existence of Allah could be summarized in three. Number one are those objections which are based upon scientific discoveries. So you should write this down. Point number one, make a heading, objections made against the existence of Allah or the religion of Islam. One are those objections which are based upon scientific research or the scientific theories. Foremost in those scientific theories is the theory of evolution. So you have Richard Dawkins, who is a proponent of the theory of evolution and uses the theory of evolution as a means of what? Of claiming Islam and other religions or the existence of Allah is untrue, that it is imaginary. So the first objection would be with science or claiming that the theory of evolution disproves the existence of God. Number two would be objections to Sharia. So objections to the Islamic law. So non-Muslims, they would come and they would say, look, Islamic law is violent, jihad is violent, Sharia is violent, amputation of the thief, the hand of the thief is violent. So they would place a Muslim in doubt regarding Islam through objections to Sharia law. This includes other objections, so many of them. And number 3 would be the problem of evil. So they would say, if Allah exists, why does evil exist in the world? Generally speaking, broadly speaking, most of the objections of atheists or people who leave Islam can be summarized in these 3 categories. Number 1, objections through scientific research. Number 2, upon Sharia law. And number 3, the problem of evil. How do we counter each one of these objections? The quick summarized answers. For number 1, the answers from a Muslim perspective. Any empirical scientific research, what do we mean by empirical? Observable, testable scientific research can never contradict the Quran and can never contradict also the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, unless someone misinterprets the Hadith or the Quran. So observable science can never contradict the Quran or the Sunnah unless someone misinterprets a Hadith. Example, so many of you must have heard of the Hadith. Every day the sun goes under the arsh, the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and takes permission from Allah before dawning upon a different area. So the sun is dawning now in a region of the earth, but before it dawns, it takes divine permission. So scientists may say this hadith, like Maurice Bucaille, who is the author of the Quran, the Bible and science, he finds it difficult to understand such hadith. But in reality, this hadith does not contradict science. Why? Because when the hadith states that the sun is underneath the arsh, the throne, this does not mean that the sun travels from its location all the way to the arsh. No, why? Because the arsh encompasses the 7 heavens and the entire cosmos. So the sun is already underneath the arsh. Secondly, when the hadith states that the sun takes permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this means at every given moment the sun is gaining permission, divine permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving it the ability to rise in every part of the earth. This doesn't contradict science in any way or form. It is not saying that the sun stops at every point and then travels up to the arsh and then comes back down and then rises on a different nation. No. The third point, which in the same hadith which people make, is how can the sun prostrate? How can the sun prostrate? The answer to this is, when we think of prostration, we think of prostration due to the way we prostrate, because we prostrate on our hands, our knees, and on our forehead. But this is because we are created like this. But when the Quran says trees prostrate, or the sun prostrates, or the moon prostrates, this means prostration according to the way they have been created, according to the way they are. Meaning you won't see if we said this book prostrated, you wouldn't see the book bending over and prostrating the way a human being prostrates. No, the prostration is in accordance with the creation of the book. It could be in prostration at all times. The sun is in prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times, meaning submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is an example of how one hadith could be misinterpreted by atheists. So the rule is that Islam never contradicts empirical science. So how does Islam answer the theory of evolution? The simple answer is that the theory of evolution falls into an induction of science which is probabilistic, meaning it's not certain. This probability, we would say, is weak because the proof of evolution theory is inductive. It is not deductive and certain. Such scientific theories are always prone to a paradigm shift. What are they prone to? Paradigm shift. In fact, if you write down, when answering your science teacher, in fact, ask your science teacher the following question. Write this down and memorize this question. The question is the theory of evolution prone is P-R-O-N-E, prone to a paradigm shift? Paradigm is P-A, is the theory of evolution prone to a paradigm shift? Paradigm is P-A-R-A-D-I-G-M. How did you spell it? P-A-R-A-D-I-G-M. Paradigm shift. So how will you ask the question?
Is the theory of evolution prone
To a paradigm shift. This is a question to ask. In fact, I would like you to mention to your teacher, how did your science teacher respond to this question? And when you get the answer, write down the answer and send it to your teacher. Is the theory of evolution prone to a paradigm shift? What this means, is the theory prone to change? What will we say? It is prone to change. So anything which is prone to change, does it impart certainty? The answer is, it does not impart certainty. The second problem, which is objections to Sharia. Objections to Sharia is a long subject which involves objections to hudud punishments, corporal punishments, objections to hijab, objections to women's rights, objections to different aspects like the apostate law. All these things, of course, need a more detailed lecture on this. But objections to Sharia law is something which Muslims living as a minority in this country should know how to answer those objections, because there is a rise of Islamophobia in this country, where people have a phobia towards Islam, mainly due to Sharia law. The third was the problem of evil. That how do we answer the problem of evil, that why does evil exist? So many people ask this question, why does evil exist? Of course, I did a lecture on this in more depth and detail, but sufficient to say that the Quran says that perhaps you may dislike something, but it is good for you. عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. That perhaps you may dislike something, but it is good for you. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. And perhaps you may like something, but it is evil for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah knows and you do not know. This is sufficient to answer the problem of evil. That some things may apparently seem bad for us, but Allah knows that the outcome is good. And some things we would want, we think they are good for us, but the outcome is bad. Allah knows His divine knowledge, meaning Allah has the divine attribute of knowledge. Wallahu ya'lamu, Allah knows, wa antum la ta'lamun, and you do not know. Also, fa'alun lima yurid. Allah is the doer of what He wills. But there is a more in-depth answer to this regarding the problem of evil. But remember, broadly speaking, when you come across former Muslims, or you come across former Muslims that we attempt to bring back to Islam, or you come across people who are in doubt regarding Islam, or you come across non-Muslims who object to Islam, generally speaking, their objections will be one of these three types of objections regarding Islam. We move on to the next passage. The author states, لَهُ ذَاتٌ لَا تُشْبِهُ الذَّوَاتِ وَصِفَاتٌ لَا تُشْبِهُ الصِّفَاتِ. He has an essence that does not resemble other essences, and attributes that do not resemble the attributes of others. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bears no resemblance to creation. If He bore resemblance to creation, then He would cease to exist, because creation itself is contingent, meaning short-lived. After this, the author states, فَمِن صِفَاتِهِ الْعَلِيَّةِ الْحَيَاةُ وَالْعِلْمُ وَالْقُدْرَةُ وَالْإِرَادَةُ وَالسَّمْعُ وَالْبَصَرُ وَالْكَلَامُ الَّذِي لَيْسَ بِحَرْفٍ وَلَا صَوْتٍ. Among the attributes of His Most High's essence is life, divine life. Knowledge, divine knowledge. Omnipotence. Omnipotence means divine power. will, divine will, meaning Allah does what He wills, meaning He is not compelled to do something. Divine hearing and divine sight and speech, which does not consist of letters and sounds. What does it mean by divine speech? That the divine speech of Allah is unlike our speech. Our speech is made from the voice box and the air that we breathe, the tongue and the teeth. The divine speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends this, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bears no resemblance to creation. فَهُوَ حَيٌّ عَلِيمٌ قَادِرٌ مُرِيدٌ سَمِيعٌ بَصِيرٌ مُتَكَلِّمٌ. These attributes should be memorized. So the attributes that are mentioned here, hayyun, living, thus He is alive, omniscient. What is omniscient? Knowing. The word omniscient is a translation of alimun, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all knowing. Omnipotent meaning powerful, willing, all hearing, all seeing and all speaking. وَيَسْتَحِيلُ عَلَيْهِ تَعَالَى أَضْدَادُ هَذِهِ الصِّفَاتِ وَكُلُّ وَصْفٍ لَا يَلِيقُ بِتِلْكَ الذَّاتِ الْعَلِيَّةِ. The opposites of these attributes are impossible in respect to Him Most High, and likewise is every description unbefitting that exalted essence. Meaning, ascribing faults to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would say faults or deficiencies. These are or those things which are repugnant. Ascribing those to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from the mustahil, meaning from the impossibilities. وَيَجُوزُ فِي حَقِّهِ تَعَالَى فَعْلُ كُلِّ مُمْكِنٍ وَتَرْكُهُ. Yet in respect to Him Most High, it is possible for Him to do or leave anything whose existence is possible, meaning doing those things which are possible. But here sometimes some people ask a question which you may have come across, that is, can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make a boulder so huge that He Himself cannot pick up the boulder? How do we answer this objection? Firstly, how many of you have come across this question? So even you've come across this question. Yes? Where did you come across this question?
Watching on YouTube, I saw this video said that can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create something that's so heavy that you can't lift?
On YouTube. So this child came across this question on YouTube. Were you able to answer the question? You weren't able to answer the question. So this child was unable to answer the question, but the YouTube video was made by a non-Muslim. And he didn't answer the question.
He watched me, but I forgot.
Oh. So here, how do we answer this question? How we answer the question is by saying, firstly, the question is flawed. Why is the question flawed? Because the person is asking in effect, can Allah make Himself powerless? This in effect is the question. Meaning, can Allah create a boulder so huge He cannot pick the boulder up Himself? In effect, the person is asking, can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make Himself powerless? So this would be an impossibility. This is ascribing an impossibility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the answer is flawed, because making a boulder that Allah Himself cannot pick up is ascribing impossibilities to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all impossibilities are intrinsically impossible, meaning the ascription of these is impossible. You cannot ascribe such things to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the question in effect is what? Flawed. The question is what? Flawed. Meaning the question is wrong, because the person is saying, can Allah make Himself powerless? So the answer is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make Himself powerless. This is impossible. But He does that which is possible. The revealed scriptures. By the way, we finished a section, so if there are any questions on this section, you can place your hands up or write the questions and send them to the front.